Thank you for joining us today for another exclusive interview. I'm your host today, Aurelian Tremian. In a groundbreaking collaboration that could reshape equine welfare and competitive intelligence across global racing, three industry pioneers have united to test technology that simultaneously tracks performance and monitors health in real time during live racing. McLloyd, the French technology company already trusted by France Galop, Le Trot, Hollywood Bets, Italy Qatar, and the Hong Kong Jockey Club for performance tracking data, has partnered with StrideSafe, whose biometric sensors and AI-powered algorithm have analyzed over 70,000 horses across 4 decades of peer-reviewed research. Together, they've created an integrated system that captures both the how fast and how safe in a single data stream. The Hong Kong Jockey Club has become the first major international racing jurisdiction to trial this revolutionary technology, positioning itself as the forefront of veterinary innovation and data-driven horsemanship. In this exclusive joint interview for the Asian Racing Conference Supplement, we bring together Dr. David Lambert, co-founder of StrideSafe, whose sensor technology captures 1,100 data points per second to detect musculoskeletal stress invisible to the human eye. William Dien of McLloyd, whose HPV2 tracking system delivers 35 performance indicators 10 times per second with pinpoint accuracy, and Dr. Bronte Forbes, representing HKJC world-class veterinary operation, as it evaluates how biometric intelligence complements clinical expertise. Their conversation explores not just what this technology can do, but what it means for trainers, veterinarians, regulators, and racing social license to operate in an era demanding transparency and accountability. Great to have you all here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Beautiful. So the first part of the questions will be for William Dien. So McLloyd's HPV2 tracking system, as I mentioned, delivers over 35 data indicators per horse, 10 times per second, with accuracy within 0.01 seconds and 25 centimeters. Can you explain the core technology behind this precision, and how do the GPS sensors and real-time transmission system work to capture speed, positioning, stride metrics, and sectional times in a live racing environment?
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Aurelian. So, yeah, this accuracy thing is something that was at the origin of this product, actually. So we started tracking horses with the French tender back in 2016. We tracked professional athletes at the time in the team sports field, such as rugby, football, soccer, etc. And so this tender was about tracking horses, and the main target, I would say, the main goal was to be accurate with this tracking system. The accuracy was really the one thing to deliver. And at the time, McLloyd was competing with, I think there were 42 companies at the start of this tender, and so several ideas led to our system that we have today, but there have been, of course, several phases. But I would say that the engineers at the time had some very good idea with, first of all, miniaturize some very powerful GPS devices with 1 centimeter capacity. And then it was really, really good for harness racing. But then when we had to track gallop racing, it was not enough, if I may say, because we could not reach this accuracy. So we had to invent something more. We had to think of something else. And the team at the time also think of something which is the mix of what we call the ultra wideband system that is used in many smartphones today, for example, or system, and to mix this with the GPS technology itself. So it's actually it's a tender that we have, and this is how we get very good accuracy on gallop racing, which is a very hard task, because yeah, it moves a lot and you have all the horses in a group, and you have to be accurate. So yeah, this is a succession of several innovations at the time. Yeah.
That is incredible. And McLloyd already is partnering with France Galop, Le Trot, as I mentioned, Hollywood Bets, Italy, Qatar, and also, of course, HKJC for performance and broadcast data. What strategic considerations led you to partner with StrideSafe, to add equine health monitoring? And how does combining these two data streams create a solution greater than the sum of its parts?
Well, I'll have to be honest, it was not my idea originally. Actually, StrideSafe came to us. The connection already existed with Hong Kong, and we were working with Hong Kong for the tracking system. And one day we had StrideSafe people saying, "Hi, maybe we can do something together. What about providing some welfare data for the club in race data?" So we had to study the possibility of doing this, technically speaking. It took some time to see what could be possible and what will be the developments in order to do this. But so it was not my idea, but I saw something here very interesting, that on top of what we can already deliver to the jurisdictions, the jockey clubs, all the broadcast thing that we can provide, the race reports, the timing, etc. We can add the let's say, in a word, the welfare part on the table. So it's like having a real other vertical, very important function. So I saw this as a very important thing to add on top of what the system could provide at the time. So yeah, it was really interesting to work on this part, and having one system doing both is really important, because in racing, you cannot have a lot of sensors on your horse. So if you can do more things with the same system, the value is improved a lot, and you can put your system at the core of the racing, and it's really important to deliver the welfare part also. I can just to be brief, I can also mention the GPS world in rugby and football came from performance analysis to injury prevention, and now they are addressing more and more about broadcast things, while we, on the contrary, started with broadcast and then also performance, and now we are looking to the welfare part. So it's interesting to see those two trajectories.
Amazing. And with Hong Kong Jockey Club becoming the first major international racing jurisdiction to test this integrated system, groundbreaking integrated system, what are the far-reaching implications for racing globally on an international scale?
Well, the implications, I would say, well, it's still the beginning of the project. We have done things to see that this can work, and we are still learning. We have learning curve altogether on this. The implication, well, it's not big changes are required for having this. The system already exists. It's already working on 12,000 races per year, and we can very easily switch to put this option, I would say, on top of what we do already. It has to be all this data. You can imagine the amount of data that we deliver. All this data has to be analyzed and treated by the StrideSafe staff and science. So I would say all the work is most on their part. Our side is very technical, and we deliver the data, but the big part is for StrideSafe. So yeah, I hope this first experience we have with the Kong Jockey Club will give some ideas and some envy to the other jurisdictions all around the world, and very soon I think we can prove that it's working, and we have good things to put on the table.
Excellent. Very well. Perfect. The next set of questions will be for Dr. David Lambert. So StrideSafe peer-reviewed research in, I think it's called JAVMA, is built on 40 years of study and data from over 70,000 horses. Can you explain how the 3-ounce sensor technology works, capturing, data 1,100 times per second at racing speeds of 40 miles per hour, and what specific gait abnormalities and musculoskeletal indicators your AI algorithm are trained to detect?
Very good. Well, again, thank you for the invitation. Let me begin by just modifying some of those introductory comments, if I may. Certainly, we've been in this for 4 decades or more, but I've spent my life studying performance in a private sense, working for just a few big stables around the world. And it was in 2019 when there was this sudden focus on fatalities in racing that we turned our attention specifically to these welfare issues. From that time, the data that we've collected, we have presented for publication because it's necessary that the world and the leaders of racing see this information, can understand it and believe in it in order to be able to move the whole concept forward. So there was this change in and around 2019 when we began to publish. And there are papers coming out all the time now, and we're submitting papers all the time, which statistically back up the observations that we've made and the position that we're taking. So 40 plus years, certainly, but peer-reviewed articles only since 2019. And the 70,000 number is the number of horses that we've looked at with these systems. Prior to that, it would probably be 200,000 horses during our lifetime that we've taken physiological measurements on and that we've used to develop our physiological understanding of the horse. And that was very important because without that, we couldn't have made the necessary steps and the big moves that we were able to make when we started looking at the welfare issue specifically. So a small point, but an important one, I hope, nevertheless. The technology, simply what's happening is these little sensors, these little devices are able to pick up changes in movement. Whenever there's a movement of any kind, behind that there is a force. Some force has come to bear upon some object, and that object will move. If I push a chair, that chair is going to slide or tip over. There's a force with which I have to do that. So if you're able to measure the movement and the rate at which that movement changes, then you're getting a measurement of the amount of force that caused that movement. So by measuring movement, we're able to measure forces, in this case, those that are being generated by the horse when he's running at high speed. There's a lot going on, and anybody who rides a horse is going to tell you about that, because when you sit on a horse and you're galloping or racing, there's all this movement under your body. You're feeling it in your feet, your knees, your thighs, your back, your hands, your head. Everything's moving in a rhythm with the animal. So all that movement is being created by the forces and the sensations coming out of the horse. So we simply wanted to measure that. How can we measure what the jockeys feel? And the good news about using technology is that it never forgets. So whereas you might have a jockey forgot what a horse felt like 2 years ago when it rode it, the sensors will never forget. They remember for all time. And So we're able to take all the experience that an older jockey might have, look at it in even finer detail because we're taking measurements so very, very quickly. A jockey might be able to compute 4 or 5 input signals per second during the stress of a race. That's about all your brain can handle and compute it into an outcome. Whereas we're picking up 1,100 or so data points in each of 3 directions. That's side to side, up and down, and front and back. So you're talking 3,000 pieces of information every second coming into the system, which is remembered with perfect clarity forever. And because it's all numeric, then we're able to apply fairly sophisticated analytics to the numbers to try and understand them. So that's in essence what it's doing is kind of measuring these movements, understanding the forces behind it. It has origins in horsemanship, in riding. That's kind of what it's doing. So it fits kind of what we know. But at the other end of that, this is all brand new territory for us. And we don't really know absolutely and clearly why a certain movement is occurring the way it is. We're taking measurements up along the lumbar spine, and yet we're able to predict if the left front fetlock, for example, is about to suffer a sesamoidian fracture. So that's a long way away from the sesamoidian fracture in the left front to movements of the lumbar spine. And we don't profess to be able to understand how and why that's happening. All we can do is take measurements and then do correlations and say, when we see these particular measurements, that has corresponded in the past with fractures in this particular area. But the detail of that we do not know. We can hypothesize, we can guess, we can all sit around and have a beer and chat and have some interesting ideas, but we don't really know. But nevertheless, the statistics and the mathematics and the analytics are definite. So the data is telling us the end result, and we as human beings have to spend the coming years trying to understand quite how did that happen. So that's in simple terms what's going on.
That is pretty incredible indeed. And your version 4.2 system can now identify specific areas on a horse at risk for injury, including condylar and sesamoid concerns. What measurable results have you documented, early intervention made, injuries prevented, or horse flagged for veterinary attention before a serious incident occurred?
Okay. May I, again, let me put the comments and the question a little bit into context. In my comments, you're going to get the sense of the big picture. Let's step back a bit. You asked earlier on about international consequences of the system that McLloyd have developed. I'd like to just touch on that with this part of your questioning. And this is a very unique and special thing. Up until this moment in time, racing has not had the benefit of any information of any kind from the horse itself. We know how far it went and we know how fast it went, and we might have made a couple of basic measurements, but we don't really know what's happening to the horse's body. So everything that's been developed in racing is developed without knowledge of our athlete. Now that we've got this information, we for the first time now have 3,000 pieces of information every second for every horse that runs for all time. So we're in a completely new world. Now what we can do is begin to think about what's good for the horse, because we know what the horse is telling us. The horse is talking to us now. And so with every problem that you come across in racing, you're now going to be able to open a brand new door. We've had all these problems shipping them around or going to different races or racing secretaries fighting with trainers. You have all these things that go on in racing, but we've never had the horse speaking. But now we've got data from the horse is talking, and hopefully the world now will be able to pivot and say, for the well-being of the horse, what do we do for the well-being of the horse? And if we look after the horse, then all the other problems are going to go away. If we put horse first and foremost. Now, we all care for horses, don't get me wrong, and the world has operated with a care for horses, but it's also been subjected to powers. When there are power structures in place when any decision is ever made for a horse, and the power system tends to dominate. So, for example, if a horse is shipping a long way to a big international race, those people holding the race can inflict certain requirements upon the competitors because they have the power to do so. And to a greater or lesser extent, there's those little power plays everywhere. But if you look at it, although we have the interest of the horse at heart, we don't have an opinion from the horse. We're playing power structures. Now you're going to be able to have an opinion from the horse. What is good for the horse? So that means we're going to be able to look at everything we come across in racing and start with that. Start with the well-being of the horse, and then develop all the strategies that we need to do to manage them after that. So that's a big overview that you'll see, I hope, throughout this. And I'm hoping at the end of this little session, people will be able to say, yeah, we can do this for the horse now for the first time ever. So in terms of our different algorithms, that version 4.2, that was a paper that we just recently had published in the Journal of the American Veterinary Medical Association. We chose 4.2 for that publication because it concentrated on just two conditions, and they were the two most common fractures in racehorses, fractures to the sesamoids and fractures to the condyle of the front legs. We narrowed the focus for the purposes of the paper. We are, in fact, on version 4.5 in reality. So we can also do measurements and detect fractures in the hind legs. We can detect other rather more strange fractures. And we've just now come out with an addition where we can tell even which horses are in danger of having a heart attack. And in some cases, we've seen that 8 months before the horse actually died from a heart attack, there were signs on our little sensors. So then going back to what I said earlier, the data is the data. There's no denying the actual numbers. But how on earth does this happen? How on earth can we tell 8 months before that a horse is going to have a heart attack? Now, you can chat and think and have good ideas. Well, maybe the heart's not working so well. Maybe the muscles aren't working so well. Maybe there's a little wobble. Maybe the sensor's picking that up. That's what we think's happening. But we don't know for absolutely sure. But we can do that now. So slowly but surely, we're developing a whole repertoire of tests that allow us to pinpoint these things. Back one step earlier than that, we can detect asymmetry at high speed. Is the horse moving a little bit to the right? Again, back to being a rider. You're coming around a turn and the horse is getting in or he's getting out. Something is moving sideways. What's that all about? And we'd report it to the trainer so he can address it. Well, this is doing the same thing, but in very, very fine detail. We can measure the side-to-side stuff. And that's the first thing, the first sign that we usually see that a horse is in trouble somewhere, the side-to-side movements that shouldn't be there. So we can detect the very earliest signs of things going on. We can detect, for example, when a 2-year-old, a young 2-year-old early in its career, is unable to hold its stride together for a suitable amount of time to compete. It takes a lot of strength for a horse to be able to stand on one hind leg in the process of the stride, holding his body there while he puts together a balanced and efficient stride. That takes power and strength, and that only comes with time. And so horses are often run prior to them having developed that strength. So as a consequence, the back end will collapse when he's standing on that leg. There's a little downward movement, and that's the dorsoventral plane up and down. And our sensor picks it up, that horse in the middle of its stride for a thousandth of a second dropped. And that's important. A hundredth of a second drop is going to add up to 14 lengths at the end of a mile race if he does that for every stride. So these minute little things have a massive effect at the end. And when we can detect this in young horses, we then see that as a consequence, their front legs don't hit the ground properly, and we get another shake or a wobble. And as a consequence of that, when they're up in the air, they have to twist and turn again, because a horse can only direct the momentum of his body when he's in the air. He can't do anything too much with his front end. It's too narrow and too tall, and he's on and off it too quickly. But when he's up in the air, right, when his body's moving forward, he can turn his pelvis, he can bend it, he can twist it, he can rotate it, which is right where our sensor's sitting. And as he does that, he'll redirect his body, a bit like a rudder would steer a big ship. It steers from the back, turning the whole thing. Well, that's what the horse does, and our sensors can pick that up. And if there's a lot of adjustment in the air, it means there's been a lot of problem during the ground, the stance phase in the earlier parts of the stride. So now we're picking up how young horses develop. Can they hold their strides together? Are they reacting badly over their front legs because the back end isn't right? Are they having to readjust while they're up in the air? And how long can they keep doing this before something's going to happen and they might start to hurt themselves, right? So here now we're getting information about the overall functionality of the horse. We're getting data from the horse. The horse is telling us what it's like to do all these things, and when it goes wrong, we pick it up. So in the paper you referred to, 4.2, that was just the version that told us about sesamoids and condyles. And so there are cases that we've had where we've seen this happen. We've told the trainer has taken them off to PET scans, and they found information on the PET scan and been able to catch the horse and save it from serious injury. A lot of these pieces of information, I'm afraid, are medical in nature. We take the position this data, this information falls into the veterinary medical domain. It's confidential, client, patient, doctor data, just like any other piece of physiological or medical data from the horse. So it's all confidential. And our business model is to hold it confidential and to hold it in the same context as veterinary medical information. These are, in effect, medical records, and that's how we treat them. So those aren't things that we can talk about, put adverts out about, do all that kind of thing without the specific permission from the owner of the horse. So whereas I cannot give you specific examples because of those restrictions, I can tell you that virtually every case we've ever sent in for a PET scan has shown up positive somewhere in those bones. There are a number of cases that we've caught a year again before the actual fatality or the injury. We've seen conditions developing and monitored them over a period of time until the final diagnosis is made. So interventions are happening all the time. There are very clean ones that we see. It's this equals that, and there you go. But a lot of times it's rather more vague. We get some sign that the signal is strange, something funny is happening. It might be looking a little bit like a sesamoid or a little bit like a condyle, and we give that information to the trainer and their vets, and they go all over the horse and they'll find something, not necessarily always the thing we found. For example, we had one just the other day that had a sesamoid flag, told the trainer, he went all over the horse, and the problem ended up being the shoes were too small. The horse had been shod recently. They'd put a different size of shoe on. The foot must have been causing some problems. That came on our sensors. They modified. The trainer thought that's what it was. No real way to prove it, but he thought that's what it was. So took the shoe off, put some new ones on, breezed it, worked the horse with the sensors on again, and it had gone away. So there's all these new little things are going to come over the years, as trainers and veterinarians become used to these things. And right in the middle of these things, as we flag them, are cases which were in danger of dying, and they're going to find those as well. But it's not absolute pinpoint this for that. It's this horse is in trouble. He's looking like a horse that could break a leg, for example. Please look at him. They look at him. That area was in fact okay, but we found a shoe, or we found a bruise, or we found something else. Oh, yes, indeed. Thank you. We found it on a PET scan. That's the nature of how this is going to be. So this is brand new veterinary medical information to give to the trainers and their veterinarians to work out this precise diagnosis of what caused this signal change. That's the way it's going. And again, in the same context, brand new information. This is a completely new area for veterinary medicine. We haven't had this information ever before. We've got ultrasounds, we've got X-rays, we've got PET scans. We don't have accelerometer data, not yet. So one of our missions is to bring all this information into veterinary practice, into the veterinary universities, so they can teach their students. This is a whole new door to open for vets to take advantage of in the coming years. And in all the ways I've just discussed, the development of the horse, the pathology of the horse, the bruising, athletic ailments of the horse, all these things we're going to get information on from these centers.
Excellent. Talking a little bit more technicalities, I would say, what does the implementation timeline typically look like? And what infrastructure requirements, technical adaptations are needed for race courses to adopt this combined solution?
In essence, it's very, very quick. It's very easy. We did this on purpose. When we set off to do this, we said if ever we're going to be able to contribute, we're going to have to dovetail smoothly with the choreography of a day's racing. It's a busy procedure. The horse is coming over, getting saddled, running the race, the saddle's coming off, then taken away, the next horse is coming in. There's a lot going on. It's choreographed all the way through. And if we put anything complicated in the middle of that, then it wasn't going to be able to work. So we had to design something that would just slip right in without anybody knowing. So the sensors being placed as they are up over the lumbar spine in pockets underneath the saddle cloth can be put on by the trainers in the saddling procedure. In what we do in America, the sensor is put on in the jockey's room. It's put in the saddle cloth itself in the jockey's room. The valet then just takes the saddle cloth down to the paddock, puts it on the horse runs around. Nobody really knows it's on there. And then when the race is finished, the valet grabs the saddle cloth and brings it back up to the jock's room, throws it to the guys who are supposed to launder it and all that kind of thing. We grab our sensor out of the pocket and put it in the computer, and we've got the data. So it fits very smoothly, very easily. It was designed for that. And then we knew we were going to have to get the results quickly, and we were going to have to get it inexpensively. People didn't want long, complicated stuff that was going to cost a fortune. That means automation. So we have spent a lot of time, 4 or 5 years now, developing the algorithms and automating everything. So that means now it's very quick. Once we put the data into the computer, it's milliseconds, and we've got our first series of reports. So it's very, very fast, very inconspicuous as far as the racegoer and the trainer is concerned. But then it's also available for much more detailed information if you want to have manual investigation of any particular event. That takes more time. That will take the veterinarian, that will take him maybe another hour to have a look at. But that's for a specific case. But the system comes in, it's very easy, it's very smooth, it's very fast. The results are very quick, they're relatively inexpensive. We have to do that if this was ever going to make it. So, and we've gone all out to be able to fit with that kind of a standard. As far as putting it at a racetrack, if a racetrack calls on Saturday this is in America with the systems we're using there. If they call on Saturday, we'd like to employ this setup. We can be operational in a day or two. You can educate all the people and show them what to do. Very easy to handle the whole thing the way it's set up right now. So yes, it's designed to be fast. It's designed to be inconspicuous, and we can put systems together very, very quickly.
Beautiful. I believe we might be cut off fairly soon. However, I'm going to send you probably a new link by email, if that's okay with the three of you, so that we can continue with that. I think I have two more questions for you, and then we'll be moving to.
Yeah, sorry, I'll be quick. I've gone on a bit.
No worries. All good.
Carry on.
Thank you very much, William. Glad you are helping us on this side. So yes, how can veterinary teams utilize biometric data for longitudinal health tracking?
Well, the records are there, and it's just a matter of organizing access. So just like any other veterinary medical record, vets can share records one with another and see how the horse is going. We produce reports for the trainer, and that report has on it all the previous races or fast works that horse has in our database. So a trainer might run a horse today, get the result tomorrow, and as he has that result, he'll see the previous, let's say, 6 races will be on his report, so he can monitor the development. So relatively straightforward, technically very straightforward to keep the longitudinal record, and it's just a matter of fitting in with the systems and controls in each racing jurisdiction.
That's actually what I was planning to talk next, was more about regulations. So as racing jurisdiction globally face, increasing pressure regarding equine welfare and social license to operate, how do you envision the new technology availability or available to vets influencing regulatory frameworks? Could there come a point, where racing authorities mandate pre-race health thresholds based on scans, ultrasounds, or even biometric data, or even require post-race veterinary examination triggered by those specific sensors reading?
This is going to be another really good example of how we now have a new opportunity to address problems. So let's say we had a problem. What's the problem we have in the regulatory community? What is it primarily? The difficulty is it's based on opinion. Right? In America anyway, there's a lot of conflict between the regulatory vets and the trainers, particularly when you get these confrontational moments right before a big horse, before a big race, when the vet wants to scratch the horse. And I'm afraid it's just built on opinion, right? The opinion of the trainer is that it's okay, and the opinion of the veterinarian might be that it's not. And making that even more problematic is every horse that has died on a racetrack in America was passed by the trainer and the vet before it ran. So the opinion is inherently flawed, right? So we've got confrontations, we've got flawed opinions, we've got power struggles. The trainers may have trained 5,000 runners, the vet may only have been working for a year. This is very, very, very difficult circumstances. So where's the problem? Okay, how can the technology work? The technology works on behalf of the horse. It's the horse speaking, right? So we can then say, okay, we need to have a standard beyond which this horse can't be entered in a race. We don't have to fight one another the day of the race. What we can do is say it mustn't even be entered in a race. So we can come up with a score, let's say from a range from 1 to 500, of what all the data says about the likelihood of that horse getting hurt or suffering a fatal injury. And this is math again, this is just numbers. And the regulatory community can look at this data and decide, and in the industry can decide, what's the cutoff beyond which a horse will not be accepted for entry. And let's say on this scale it was 80. That was above that it was unsatisfactory. And to give you some idea of that, because we do this, if you get above 125 on our score, and there are very, very few of them, 1 out of 4 of those in our database died in the subsequent race. So clearly, you don't want to let that horse in a race, right? So that's an example of the extreme of the kind of things that you're dealing with. So now the horse is talking to us and it says, I'm in risk. I've got a certain amount of likelihood that I'm going to be injured. Look after me, please. And so the community can then pick the number. Now, the good news about that is the moment a horse has run, we give that number to the trainer and to his veterinarian. So after the race, he gets a 25, and that 25 means he can or he cannot enter in the next race. And if he gets over the number, the trainer knows immediately. And he's got several weeks before the next race to work with that problem with his clinical vet, the clinical vet with the regulatory vet, because the regulatory veterinarian will have the same information or should have the same information. And then everybody's working together for the well-being of the horse. We don't want him to run above an 80. We want him to get better. Where's his problem? How can we work together? Do we enter him in a race? Do we allow him to run? All these things now become a decision for everybody to make in the best interests of the horse. And then there's no conflict because we're all on the same page. And if we argue about whether it should be an 80 or a 70, well, we can have committee meetings on that, and we can have statistics on that, and we can move it up and down according to what we want. And there'll be different pressures for big races and little races. All these different things will be there. But ultimately, the thing that decides what happens is the well-being of the animal. So once again, we're opening a door to a brand new technology that we can apply to each of the problems as they show up, and our underlying principle is the well-being of the horse, and then we all end up on the same page. And the ideal world, I think, and I really hope this comes to pass in the next few years, that's where we end up. That will make the regulatory veterinarian's position so much more satisfactory, and it will get rid of all this confrontation. And it will unite everybody to make sure that everything proceeds safely.
Definitely. In any case, data is data, so it's hard to go against it or even deny it. So I guess that makes it much easier for everyone to agree and move on.
Yeah, it would be a factual discussion based upon rules that have been established with good study prior to the event and could be renewed whenever or looked at specifically for a specific event. But whatever it is factual. It will be backed up by tens of thousands of case histories. Right now, we only have 70,000. But imagine in a year or two, there'll be a million. There'll be a million plus of these records. So the data is undeniable. The risks, the chances of a horse dying, these are going to be undeniable statistics. So it's going to be straightforward to set the rules.
Excellent. All right, we have a bunch of new questions for Dr. Bronte Forbes. So with Hong Kong Jockey Club becoming the first major international racing jurisdiction to test this groundbreaking integrated system, as I mentioned earlier in the introduction, what are the technical challenges that you see for this product to become a standard?
I guess for us at the Jockey Club, as you say, we like to be at the forefront of using technology to help with horses. And as William discussed before, we had these sensors on our horses anyway for our racing data, our timing and such. We then saw the potential to use some of the data that was within those sensors that wasn't being activated to look at how those horses move during an actual race. So this technology has been used by us and many other people to clinically assess horses at the trot in hand, but using this data at a horse when on a horse when it's galloping, especially in a race, is something new and makes a lot of sense to us because you're measuring that horse when it's under the most pressure. So for us, we're very keen to start looking at this data, but we acknowledge that there's still a lot to learn, and we all have a lot to learn with this data. So, we have to start somewhere. And as Dave said, we have to collect that data and we have to collect those numbers, and then we have to start looking at it.
Definitely. It is very important.
So yeah, that's right. So the challenge, I suppose, is getting those, getting that data off horses. But we are quite uniquely set in Hong Kong to do that because we already have those sensors on the horses. It's just getting that data off and then assessing it.
Excellent. And how could this in-race help data benefit connections, let's say, between trainers making race day decisions, owners understanding their horse condition, and even jockeys having, confidence in their mounts?
Well, from my point of view, as a veterinarian at the Jockey Club, what we're hoping to do is to be able to assess horses for their risk of an injury or poor performance within a race. And if we can highlight horses that are at risk of either having an injury or performing poorly, we can then have those horses more closely scrutinised pre-race, which hopefully will make the racing safer, the welfare better for horses as well, and a better racing product for everyone. So if jockeys, owners and trainers know that those horses have been screened properly and that any horses that have been highlighted at risk have gone through a strenuous process to make sure as best we can that those horses are going to race safely, then that's the benefit that I think the whole industry is looking at.
Sure. Do you see this technology becoming mandatory or even a standard in all jurisdictions worldwide? And what are the potential implications that you could see going forward?
I think there's potential for it to be mandatory, but first we have to prove that it's going to work and how well it's going to work. But as I said, I think in the last few years, the whole industry worldwide has started to work towards the same result, which is better welfare for the horses and better safety for the horses and reduction in injury. So we're all working together for the same purpose. And when one jurisdiction finds something that works, we're often all taking that up and using that between jurisdictions. So certainly I think if we can get this type of technology to work for us and we can understand it and we can prove that it works, then I think it would be taken up globally, yes.
Regarding a little bit more about the past and the present, veterinary medicine in racing has traditionally relied on clinical examination, diagnostic imaging, and obviously the veterinarian trained eye. How is data-driven innovation fundamentally changing the way veterinarians diagnose, intervene, and make decisions? And what skills or approaches must the modern racing veterinarian develop that weren't necessarily a decade ago?
I think it's important to recognise that those traditional veterinary examinations and techniques have got us to where we are today, which is a lot safer racing than what we ever used to have. And that this kind of technology is certainly not there to overtake that or remove those skills. They're still needed there. This is another tool in our toolbox that we use to go further on from where we are now. So we have limitations in the examinations that we have now. We have limitations in some of the diagnostics that we have now. And as we get this new technology, so Dave mentioned PET scanning there. When we have a new technology like PET scanning, it takes us another step forward to being safer again in racing. So I really see these sort of technologies as a synergy to classical veterinary medicine, certainly not overtaking veterinary medicine.
Awesome.
As far as new skills that veterinarians need, I think there's new skills in understanding the technology, and I think that's a big skill. And then there's understanding the new diagnostics and how we can best use these technologies to help us identify horses at risk, and then use the diagnostic techniques that we have in the most effective and efficient way.
And finally, I was just about to say on to the last question. So the Hong Kong Jockey Club operates one of the most sophisticated veterinary operations in global racing. How do you balance data-driven insights with traditional veterinary clinical judgments? And how do you envision making any of these biometric health data publicly available? Especially since I think, David, you mentioned earlier that you do a lot of private, like the data tends to be more private between the client and the company, I guess.
Yeah, so again, a unique part of the Hong Kong Jockey Club is that the veterinarians are employed by the Jockey Club, and the data is owned by the Jockey Club. So that's less of an issue for us, and a huge potential for this kind of technology for us to use it and try and determine how it could be used. But what we are hoping for and what we're attempting to do is use this kind of data as one component in risk profiling horses. So if you could PET scan every horse, if you could bone scan every horse before it ran every time it ran, that would be great, and we would probably reduce injuries, but it's not practical and it's not possible. You would need too many bone scans and you would need a lot more time. So what we're hoping is to use risk profiling of horses, of which this kind of technology would help with that risk profiling, to pick up horses in training that have a higher risk of injury or a higher risk of a problem. We can then highlight those horses to the stable veterinarians and to the trainers, and then have those horses undergo that tertiary diagnostic imaging to then hopefully reduce injuries in that way. As far as using the information publicly, again, here in Hong Kong, we sort of pride ourselves quite well on giving out as much information as we can. But I think we're still at the stage where we don't know enough about this information to release it to the public. We have to make sure that it's meaningful, and then we have to educate the public to what that means. Otherwise, I think it will cause more confusion than assistance. But yes, it would certainly be something that has potential. It also has potential for use for other areas in racing, for stipendiary stewards to monitor horses in racing. And again, to highlight horses, as I think you mentioned before, highlight horses that possibly should undergo further veterinary examinations after a race.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much for coming today. That was great. We got a lot of very detailed and interesting answers for sure. That was very good.